So, okay. All right. Well, welcome to Financial Empowerment for Women. This is a webinar with a little bit of a difference. It's a bit of a panel discussion as well. And I'm going to let each of the ladies introduce themselves too, and how we've sort of come together, as we were talking about just before, was through a joint mastermind. And we're very passionate about our topic as well. So we'll get into the different areas, which you can see some of the topics we're going to cover tonight. And this is a bit of a taste, because there is quite a lot. But it's, yeah, we're going to touch on our special areas of interest. So I'll just give a brief introduction of myself, and then I'll pass on to the other ladies. So I'm Schulte, and yeah, I'm an ex-tax accountant, corporate tax accountant. Don't hold that against me. And I've worked in management consulting for many years, and I studied financial planning. But when I started to go down that path, I realized a lot of it is just product sales, and I actually was more interested in the money education side. So that's the path I've ended up going down, and particularly focused on women, because I really feel that when women are informed, and they don't just bring themselves up, they bring others with them. So I feel very passionate about that. So I'm going to pass over now to Annette, because she's the next person I can see on my screen. Do you want to give yourself an introduction?
Hi, yes, hello. Hi, I'm Annette from Cashflow Mastery is my business. And traditionally I've had a business, and it's still running, Altitude Finance, which is a finance and mortgage broking business. So traditionally I've been working in the space of helping people financially, but particularly around property. So that's been my area of interest and expertise. And I'm a fairly long-term property investor myself. And just in the last perhaps few years, I've gone more towards the coaching side. So actually helping people with their money, because I noticed that there was such a dire kind of lack of understanding and education around money. And because it's such a taboo subject, people don't like to ask the question, but it just holds people back. And I noticed through working in the finance business that there were just the same patterns coming up and the same questions coming up. And I thought, well, if I can put and condense my sort of last 20 years of experience working with clients, as well as what I do personally, then I can really help people fast track their financial future, and create that financial independence that we're all looking for, to help us with, you know, more choices in life, and to make sure that we're not ending up, you know, just on the pension and in poverty. And Heather, I think, will talk a little bit more about the statistics. So I'm really passionate about helping people to achieve the outcomes that they didn't think was possible, because it's actually not as hard as what people think. And personal finances and success with personal finances is really just based on some timeless strategies or concepts. And, you know, there's nothing really new in the world, but it's a case of how do you cut through all the noise? Because as you know, there's so much information out there. And so really by putting that into a very simplified format, in terms of a course and in terms of some coaching, you can really cut through that noise and make a real big difference to people in their lives. And that's what really gets me going. And I really love it. I love seeing the progress from people when they make these breakthroughs. So over to you, Heather. Oh, you're just on mute, I think there.
There we go, I'm unmuted. So my name's Heather Morris, and I've come from a corporate background. So I've actually trained as an architect and ran a very successful business that was up and down the eastern seaboard. So I'm used to big business and big dollar turnover and things like that, and own multiple businesses. And part of that led me into architecture and property and some development. So property was, I guess, my first love, but I've also had lots of other investments, and along the way, I've been able to provide for myself and my family. So effectively, I'm financially independent. So my side passion is surf life saving, and I'm involved in the women's mentoring program through that. And part of that really pushes you out of your comfort zone and makes you try new things. And as that came about, I realized that as a mentor, I really like doing mentoring, but also I've got a lot to offer other people. I came through a very male-dominated industry, and you had to fight your way through. And I wish I had mentors at that time that could guide me through. And financially, I think it's a real minefield out there. And when I go through some of the statistics, you'll see what poor outcomes there are for women in this country. And I just think that's a travesty, given that we're a first world country. and we've got women that effectively are financially destitute. So there's so many things that we can do to avoid that. And so when we floated the idea of doing financial empowerment for women, I think it really gelled with all three of us, that we were like, yeah, well, that's where our passion lies. Obviously, we've all got a slightly different bent in different areas, but what we're really after is to make sure that we can impart our knowledge, and we've got lots of knowledge, and help other people in that respect. So that's my gig.
Excellent. Thanks, Heather. Now I'm just going to move on because you're up next again with our quite alarming statistics. So
Yeah.
I'll let you keep going.
Sure. So, well, I'm on the roll. So I grew up in Canberra, and I actually like politics, which is a bit strange, I know, but having dealt with a lot of government departments and stuff through my architectural company as well, it's really important that we understand how the government funds things and how budgets are developed. And just recently, the federal government put out the women's budget for the current financial year. And there's some really alarming things in that. And the reason I'm using statistics is because they're real, and statistics are factual. So we might all say, well, that doesn't apply to me, and oh, that won't affect me. But statistically, there is a very high probability that you could end up being one of the people that we're talking about, which is it's not a great thing. So what we're really asking people to do is have a think about what your future looks like in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, and really use the emotions of what that needs to feel like to generate your thinking process into planning for the future. What happens traditionally with women, we get caught up in our day-to-day activities, getting kids to school, getting to sport, providing for everyone, and we forget to look after ourselves financially. The other alarming fact is that since April 2020, $13 billion has been withdrawn out of 1.7 million women's retirement savings. So the effect of COVID and the government changing the rules on allowing us to draw from our super has meant that a lot of women did that just simply for cash flow. And out of that 1.7 million, 300,000 of them completely emptied their accounts. So there isn't great stats on the age, but suffice to say, that's a huge amount of women who have zero balance in their superannuation. So statistically as well, at retirement, women obviously have a greater risk of being in poverty, being single, living on a pension, having no investments and no superannuation. And some of this is not necessarily by design, it's more by default. So the fact that maybe they've left the work, maybe they weren't in the workforce in the first place, or maybe they left the workforce to have children, maybe there was splits in relationships, lots of different factors. Generally means earning capacity is higher, so therefore their superannuation generally is higher as well. But some of the other things that I just wanted to point out is that the government age pension is about 25% of an average person's weekly wage. So if you imagine yourself in 10, 20, 30 years time, whatever the distance is, living on a quarter of what the normal person would earn, that's actually really, really scary. And when you think about what sacrifices you have to make to be able to sustain that sort of living, obviously you're not going to be living anywhere particularly nice. You're not going to have great food, not great wine, not great travel. It'll be a very sad lifestyle. So the Australian Bureau of Statistics also released data about this sort of information as well. And 82% of the population aged 65 to 69, which is our standard retirement age in Australia, receive the age pension. So effectively, only 18% of people are self-funded. So that's less than 20% of our whole population at the moment, age 65 over, are self-funded. And that in itself is a scary stat, because that means 1 in 5 are self-funded, the rest are on pensions. Hopefully over time that's changing because of the way superannuation works. But as we stand today, that's the stats. Also, women are more likely to receive the age pension. So 64% of women over 65 get the age pension. So again, these are huge and alarming statistics, and none of us want to see our aunts and mums and whatever living in poverty. And similarly, we don't want to live in poverty as well. So that's part of what we're talking about, is small changes can add up over time to make sure that you don't end up in these positions. So the last thing I just wanted to talk about was women's financial literacy. So part of the budget papers also had an independently funded national capability survey of women's financial literacy. And what they found is, out of a score of 100, women scored 60 out of 100 and men scored 76. So effectively 40% of Australian women have no idea about finance. And that in itself is frightening. And also into retirement, only 36% of women have a plan for retirement compared to 55% of men. So I think all in all, you can see we're really on the back foot in terms of planning for our future. And it's not necessarily just retirement. It's about what life goals do you want to achieve in 1, 3, 5, 10 years? It might be travel, it might be a house, it might be investment property, all those sorts of things. If you don't start putting away small bits now, over time, you'll just end up exactly where you are now or even worse, because over the passage of time, $1 today is always worth more than $1 tomorrow. We know what inflation is doing just to simple things like our grocery bills. I was listening today about in England, there's huge, and Germany, huge problems with energy, gas and electricity, and prices are skyrocketing. So our simple things that we need to live are going to escalate astronomically and disproportionately to the amount of money that we're able to earn. So the message that we're trying to get through is let's increase our financial literacy. Let's start in baby steps. Let's see if we can change our habits, and let's see if we can empower women to start thinking about themselves first financially, and not just end up at the other end where they're really struggling to feed themselves, because in a first world country, that is really not a good thing. So that's my part on stats done.
Thank you, Heather. Wow, that's it is quite alarming actually. And the thing is, even when you learn things, you always will learn more things. And I find it's a little bit like knowledge expands. So at least just being aware of this now, it then opens the door to find out more information, and then on and on. And this is where what we're trying to do is create awareness, and then the next steps from that. So we'll move forward then into our next slide, which is, I think that's our next one. Yep. Annette, would you like to speak to this one? I'm not sure if you're on mute. Maybe. Yep, you're on mute. I'll get you to try and unmute you there.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, so why don't we talk about money? So what I've done is I've listed just a couple of the top reasons why. It's quite a complex subject, but I just want to talk to these are the main points. So let's start with taboo. So taboo is a social or a religious custom prohibiting or restricting a particular practice, or forbidding an association with a particular person, a place, or a thing. So some examples other than money around the world include the regulation of hunting, sex, food, and the dead. So not dancing on graves and things like that. And there's also superstition around a lot of this stuff too. So society generally regards money as profane. So money is taboo, even with parents feeling uncomfortable discussing it with their children. And people with money often feel as bad, if not worse, talking about money than those without it. Interestingly, in her interviews for a book, The Anxieties of Affluence, Rachel Sherman, who is a sociologist, found that people with money actually kept their financial details private to spare their friends or children from feeling bad. Although this rationale may seem genuine, it's also a justification for silence that prevents people having to confront the unpleasant fact around the fact that they might have wealth in what is deemed an unequal society. So this leads to my next point, which is judgment. So judgment is, we don't want to be judged or to be made to feel uncomfortable about the money that we do or don't have. However, our brains are wired to judge, and it helps us to determine our hierarchy compared to others. So while we think that we may not be somebody who's judgmental, or we don't compare ourselves to each other, it's just a natural part of the human psyche, and we do it unconsciously. So financial status is a way that we subconsciously use those judgments to judge not just social status, but intelligence, trustworthiness, beauty, even success and meaningfulness. So have you noticed that we actually are more comfortable talking about everything else under the sun, from sex, politics, mental health, addiction, anything but money, at least in number terms? Because interestingly, we often talk about money in terms of how expensive things are, particularly at the moment. I mean, how many conversations do you have each day where you are discussing the price of petrol, the price of groceries and your fruit and veg? And then what we do for a living, where you live, where your kids go to school, all this sort of stuff. Everyday conversations gives us the sign to form judgments about others and determines how much money they must have, because we've all got it figured out about everybody else, right? So we do this naturally, and it's just a part of who we are. But of course, my next point is that it's rude to ask, right? So if I asked everybody on this presentation tonight, especially if you don't know me, or even if you do, if I asked you how much do you earn and what's your net worth, you know, out of 1 to 10, what number would you say that was a rude question? You know, you'd be like, well, that's very confronting and very rude. You know, we don't talk about that. So you know, and interestingly, if somebody that you know was to ask you those questions, again, you might feel that's very rude, but depending on who that person was. But interestingly, even with our accountants, we have a bit of an issue being completely transparent with our money, because, you know, it's kind of like it's private, and it's something that we don't like to confront. So what ends up happening is that, bringing on to my next point, is that we're hardwired to avoid the pain of loss. So what we do is we often create versions of ourselves that matches our desired financial status rather than our actual financial situation, which is known as keeping up with the Joneses, right? We've all heard about that. So what tends to happen is then we typically will buy a car that we can't afford. We eat and stay in overpriced establishments. We buy clothes and jewelry, and that often puts us into debt. And then you throw a little bit of emotional shopping into that, and before you know it, we're just way behind the 8 ball, and we don't ever see a way forward. So all of these reasons and a lot more lead us to put money pretty much into the too hard basket, because it's just scary. So I think scary really sums this up. And but what I want to end on with this slide is that we do need to realize that our true value comes actually from within. It doesn't come from any external source or material possession or any of that sort of stuff. And what we need to do is not align our value on who we are onto money, and to give our power over to money, and have this sort of sense of loss of control, or this low self-esteem because we don't think we're good enough because of what money does. So when we're talking about money and learning how to manage it effectively, what we're really looking to do is to reduce the power that it holds over us. And I liken it to shining a spotlight under the bed to prove that actually there is no monster under there. So that's it for the slide.
Thanks, Annette. Yeah, well, this flows on quite nicely into our next slide, which is to talk about values. And this is a particular interest of mine, which is why I got to talk to this topic. But we're all very interested and believe a lot in that intrinsic value that we each have. The fact that you need to believe it as well is very important. And understanding, and like everything, we were talking before about awareness, having that awareness about ourselves, what we want and why we want it, is vital. So values, what are they? They're basically a compass that helps us direct where our focus should be and the things that we value in our lives. Quite often they're the things that we will go the extra mile for, in terms of if we don't have time, we'll make time for it. That can also mean, though, is that we'll put it aside if we feel like we need to do something else, or we'll get back to it. So you can also have values that you don't recognize enough, especially as you get older and you have other responsibilities, children come along. Sometimes things get blurred. Your own self-identity gets a bit blurred, and you've got to actually start to figure out, peel it away and go, okay, who am I? What do I value? And I need to reconnect with that. So that's where it kind of helps with the compass to give you direction in terms of where you're headed for your life, because all the knowledge in the world will only help to a certain extent if you can't apply it and know your why. So it then also makes decisions easier. So just as an example, one of my core values is creativity. So if I'm in a situation, or just say I'm looking for a new job, and the job itself, I don't get the ability to create my result or my world, it's just a very process-driven type job, not for me at all. I would get bored in a moment and I would be looking for other things to create. And I've actually been in that situation before where I've gone and I've learned all sorts of things. I can make books, I can make jewelry. I've done all sorts of things to create because I wasn't being fulfilled in my job, but I didn't know that at the time. Once you know this, you look back on your life and you go, I get why those things worked or why they didn't work. And then you can start to become more intentional and deliberate in the decisions that you make, especially with where you spend your money and how you manage it and the things that you want to actually focus on. So that's where that alignment piece comes in. So you can start to actually become more aligned, and that makes you feel better. When you feel better, you want to learn more, and then your children will start to see you role modeling this as well, and you start to feel better, and it becomes this juggernaut. And Heather alluded to it earlier as well, that it's little bits. It doesn't have to be big. It can literally just be a bit of knowledge, and you do one thing and then you do the next thing, and then little bit by little bit. And you can use your values. Sometimes we call them intuition. But then when we actually understand them consciously, we start to understand our subconscious and figure out what's making us fulfilled or then not fulfilled as well. So they're quite important, and it's helpful to have somebody to help you understand what they are. And that's also what we look at doing too. So values, I could keep on going, so I will pause it there because otherwise I'll get carried away. And I'll focus on we'll go on to our next slide, because this is also about understanding identity and habits. So Heather, I think this one is yours to talk to, or was it Annette?
Yeah, I'll start off with this one and we'll see how we go with time. But yeah, look, identity is a big one, particularly obviously we're talking financial identity. We touched on this earlier around money and why we don't like to talk about it. But essentially, we all have an identity around who we are in this world, what our status is, what we do for a living, who we are in a relationship. We all have a certain persona and a certain image that we believe in ourselves and that we want other people to see of us. And we're no different with money. We all have a financial identity too. And this is mostly formed through our conditioning growing up. We learn or not learn from our parents or our guardians, whoever's looking after us. And we tend to then become friends with the people who are like us. You've probably heard of the saying, birds of a feather flock together. So we end up blindly sort of following the norms of this identity, even though it may not be serving us. And we therefore accept the stories that we tell ourselves around this. So like it says on the slide here, how aware of our self-talk are we, and what are the stories that we're actually telling ourselves? I think I gave the example just recently about the software that we might be running, which is really our subconscious, and that's like a program. So think of yourself like a computer in a sense, that we've got our subconscious mind, and that's sort of like the programming that we've been brought up with, and everything that has shaped us to get to where we are today, who we are, our beliefs, our values, our upbringing, everything that's been passed down to us, all the information that we take in has sort of shaped who we are and the outcomes that we've created to this point. So we often, as I say, we often blindly follow these norms and we accept them to be true. And we accept the stories that we tell ourselves to be true. And a common one is, I'm no good with money, or I'll never be financially independent. These are common stories that I hear in my clients, and I've heard over the years. And I would say a lot of that it's both men and women, but I would say that women are typically tend to be more down on themselves in a lot of ways, and they don't have, dare I say it, they don't have, we've all got ego, right? But sometimes women can be a lot more vulnerable and can be a lot more self-criticizing and also maybe open, and they're happy to talk about it a little bit more. So where do our habits fit into this? Well, our habits are based around this identity. So from the identity, we create habits. So we are this type of person, or we're not good with money. So therefore we display characteristics and we behave in a way that's in accordance with that identity. So then our outcomes are then based on those habits. So really, to peel back the layers, you've actually got to come back to what is that self-talk? What are the stories that you're telling yourself? And what is it that you need to do to be able to reshape that? Because we all know that we're such infinite beings. We've got so much potential inside of us that we can we're so capable, and especially as women, we're so capable, and we've got so much potential that we can actually learn from this and say, okay, well, first of all, it's the awareness piece. Okay, well, how am I talking to myself? You know, would I even talk to my best friend in the same way that I talk to myself? Probably not, you know, because we can be our own worst critic. So improvements are only temporary until they become actually who you are. You've actually got to step into that role, and it's got to become who you are in order to see that sort of behavior and that habit change. So, for example, the goal is not to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. I'm a reader. I'm not just someone that picks up a book once in a while. I'm a reader. I'm an avid intaker of knowledge, and this is who I am. This is what I do. So you know that piece has to come from that change of identity. So if you want to make any changes in your life, you need to sort of start to go back and question some of the norms, the cultural beliefs, and some of that identity piece that you've taken on. So I hope that has given some sort of overview of identity and habits.
Yeah, I might just add to that too, Annette. So there's a saying about the power of five, and that essentially says that you're a combination of the 5 people that are closest to you that you hang out with. So you very much reflect what their habits are. So if you are with friends that, as you say, they're keeping up with the Joneses, etc., you're more likely to follow their patterns by association as well. And I think the other thing at the moment that we've got going on with financial identity is that there's a lot of aspiration. So social media has caused great aspirations in terms of, I must have everything now. The whole Afterpay thing has gone crazy, where everybody can have things instantaneously. So there's no waiting or no patience anymore. Everything's instant. And I think particularly in the younger generation, they're getting the identity caught up with the physical possessions, and that's causing some dire financial outcomes at the other side, where they're getting themselves into very large amounts of debt at a very young age to keep up with the image that is being perpetuated on social media. So I think there's a disconnect as well between who you are and this aspirational figure of who you might like to be as well.
Yeah, thanks, ladies. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you ladies, I remember the days of lay-by, where you put money away bit by bit, and then only once you finished paying it off, you actually got the goods. That doesn't apply anymore. I still remember saving for my first camera, and the feeling of pride when I actually had saved up enough to buy it. Oh, it felt amazing. So the younger generation don't know what they're missing. Delayed gratification can be lovely. No, but it's an ongoing issue. So we'll just move to our next slide here, and I'll start with this, and then I'll pass on to Heather for a little bit more. So to kick off some of the questions that we hear quite a lot, and that we'll answer now, and then we'll open up a little bit later for some more questions as well. And Annette sort of spoke about this a bit as well. I'm not good with numbers, so how can I be good with money? Well, you don't really, even though money are numbers on a screen, it's so much more than that. And there's so many tools out there now too. Our phones are like walking computers. They have apps that can calculate so many things for us. So this is just a belief that actually limits us in terms of progressing where we want to go. And quite often limiting beliefs are there to try and keep us safe. It's our brain's way of saying, oh, that could be dangerous. I'm going to hold you back from exploring that because you might get hurt. And so the feeling behind it, or the motivation behind it, can be good. It's like a person who wants to try and hold you back, depending on the situation, but they might be doing it from a sense of safety. You know, they want to keep you safe, because ultimately we're fight or flight creatures. But there will be a point at which you need to make that assessment for yourself and go, you know what, this isn't actually keeping me safe. This is holding me back. This limiting belief that I'm holding up here, and I control what's up here, not anyone else. The belief that I have in my mind, I can change it, replace it with something else, because it's very hard to just remove something. It's like the habit to just stop something. You've got to replace it with something else. smokers will quite often change what they do, you know, like replace it with gum, or like with chocolate, I have to replace it with something else if I want to try and eat less chocolate. Just taking it away, you feel the deprivation. So this is, you know, another way to look at this is to try and listen to the words that you're telling yourself and go, is this really in my best interest? I don't think so. I need to replace it with something else. And then another question we often get is, how can I successfully manage my personal finances? That's quite a big topic. And again, you chunk it down. So you don't have to get good at all of it all at once. There might just be a little sliver, and you go, okay, let's figure out what your values are, what's important, and focus on that one little slice. You get good at that, and quite often with money especially, you can put things on autopilot. So get that right, put it on autopilot, put it aside, and then you can focus on the next thing. So you don't have to do it all at once. You can just do bit by bit, but that incremental things that you do make an impact down the track. You've probably all heard of compounding. It can work for you and against you. So if you do things that are in your best interests, the impact of that will build over time. Now, I'll pass the next couple of questions over to Heather if you want to continue with these, and then we'll keep on going so we get to the proper Q&A part.
Sure. So tracking your money, like there's lots of apps and spreadsheets and things like that, but in my mind, it's actually should be a very simple delineation. It should be the fixed costs versus lifestyle costs. Now, accountants have different terminology, but for me, tracking your money, fixed costs are your costs that you have to pay, your rent or your mortgage or your car repayments and things like that. Now, we don't round those up. So if we're paying our telephone bill and it's, you know, $99, we're not going to round that up to $100 or $105 to tip the person. They're fixed costs. So we can work out what those are over a week or a month or a fortnight very, very easily. It's our lifestyle costs where things tend to go awry. So if we're going out to dinner, have another drink, or, you know, tip the waiter and things like that. And that's where a lot of the spending can get out of control very easily. So in terms of tracking your money, I would say to people, really focus on what you're spending on your lifestyle, almost like your automatic spending. You're not even thinking about it. If you're tapping and going for everything, then have a look at your bank statements at the end of the month and actually see what you did spend money on. A lot of it could be just mindless spending, like mindless eating. Going to the fridge can be mindless spending. So tracking your money, it's always, you need to be able to have some sort of basis point to see where it's spending first. And then from there, you can go on and change some habits. So small habits, like, for example, when you go to pay your mortgage or your rent, maybe putting a certain amount away into a savings account at that same time, so it becomes an automatic process rather than saying, oh, at the end of the month, I'll put away 10% of my savings. You get to the end of the month, there's never 10% there. So little tips and tricks like that to help track where your money goes. What happens if I don't do anything? Well, we've discussed all the statistics on that, and it's pretty grim. And what tends to happen is, it's the old adage of in the aeroplane, you know, if the oxygen masks drop, the women need to put theirs on first. You need to provide for yourself first and foremost, for your children if you have them, your relatives, your elderly parents, etc. But what tends to happen is that things get in the way, so life gets in the way, and there's not a lot of planning. It's just living day to day, month to month. So I guess the way I look at it is that you really have to take stock of yourself at some point in time, draw a line in the sand and to say, what do I want in the future? What's my future life going to look like, and what am I going to plan to do, and how am I going to get there? And what will happen when I do that? Well, hopefully you'll have a fantastic life. And did you want to add anything to any of those questions? Annette? Sorry, did you want to add anything to that?
Sorry, I was on mute there again.
Yeah.
No, I think you covered it really nicely. Obviously, like you said, it's chunking it down, and there are methods. Just coming back to the tracking the money, I think it is important that we do it, because when we actually look at it, we can see what's going on. I think the biggest thing that I find with my clients is that they just don't know where their money goes, and they seem to be shocked at the end of every month. And it's kind of like, you've been doing this month after month after month. So the tracking of the money, I think, is really important. And it's not something you have to do forever, but get into the habit of knowing where your money goes and actually tracking it, because like you said, those small incremental things that we buy add up, and before we know it, we haven't got enough to pay our rent or our mortgage or the electricity or for some of the important things. So, it comes back to that old adage of putting the big rocks in the jar first, So you put your big rocks in, and then you fill it up slowly with all the other ones, the smaller rocks, and then the sand, and the sand represents our discretionary spending and all the spending that we do that's a little bit mindful, and sometimes it's based on our emotions. So even if you've never tracked your money ever before, a really good way is just to, let's just say you get paid fortnightly, just make a note, even on old-fashioned pen and paper, just write down everything that comes in for that fortnight and write down everything that goes out, and just go, at the end of the 14 days, and just have a look at it. And the numbers don't lie, and what you've spent doesn't lie, and you just analyze it. And then you might do another fortnight in a month's time and sort of compare and just say, okay, where are we at? So it's just starting small and bringing some baby steps in, and then as you get more comfortable, there are some few more sophisticated ways that we can do it. And I've when I bring clients into my program, I set them up with some tracking software that does it for them. They're responsible for reconciling their transactions, and what that does is it spits out a report at the end of the month saying, right, this is how much has come into the household and this is how much has gone out. And then people can start getting that visibility and seeing if they're making a profit or a loss, like in a business. So if a business makes a loss month after month, it's not going to be a sustainable business, and we need to replicate that across into our personal finances as well.
I just wanted to add to that, Annette, a lot of mothers don't realize it, but your family is a small business. It's a lot of cash that turns over. There's a lot of transactions that happen. And I think sometimes if they looked at it as a business and thought, well, look, we can't live beyond our means, that just isn't effective, and they considered it in more of a business fashion, it might be easier to allocate those lumps of money to different things and have a better plan of attack than just spending willy-nilly and going, at the end of the month, I've got nothing.
Yeah, I agree. And I say to people, you are the CEO of you. You're the business. You are the chief operating officer.
Yeah, and there's different ways to do it. I tend to work on more like chunks of money and kind of put things in different bank accounts and manage it different ways. But yeah, I think the important thing is to spend less than you earn ultimately. So I'm gonna keep us moving, because we still need to have time for Q&A. So Heather, you have the confidence C's. If you want to take us briefly through that, please.
Yeah, so we love the acronyms. So the 4 C's of success are commitment, courage, capability, and confidence. But the reason I wanted to talk about these is, if you think of them like a clock, where commitment's at the 12, courage is at the 3, capability is the 6, and confidence at the 9, we actually need to have the whole clock operating together, or we won't succeed. So it's fine to say we'll commit to something. So everybody's keen at the start of the program, I'm going to commit to it, I'm going to do this, and have the courage to do it. But it all falls apart if we don't have the other half of the clock. If we don't have the confidence or the capability to do something, then it won't work. So it's a bit like starting a diet. I'm fully committed and I'm courageous and I'm going to do it, but if I haven't got the capability to stick to it, or the confidence to overcome the hurdles that will come along the way, then it's not going to work. So all of those quadrants need to work together. And I think it's really important that women do tend to lack capability and confidence. That's what we talked about with the financial literacy. So even though they might be committed to saying, yes, I'm going to fix my financial situation, I'm in debt, but I'm going to get out of it, and they actually maybe even cut up a credit card in a dramatic way of showing that they're going to do it, if they don't have the capability of knowing how to change their situation or the confidence to take those steps, then nothing's going to change. So what I'm really about, and I think we're all really about, is giving women small steps that they can take so that they can gradually build up that capability. And capability is about small wins. So it's not about knowing everything right from day one. It's about saying, yes, I've had a small win and I can move on to the next thing, a small habit that then grows and grows and grows. And as Annette was saying, you can start by going at the end of the month, well, where did all my money go? To then saying, okay, after a few months, right, well, I know where my money's going and now I've got to change. And then over time, it might take you a while, but over time, you'll have the capability to completely change your whole situation. And these small steps will add up to big things over time. So none of us have made our investment decisions like when we made our investment decisions, they weren't for the short term, they were for the long term. So all of our wealth has been built up slowly over time. None of us won the lottery, unfortunately, and it's unlikely that most people will win the lottery. So what we're saying is just make sure that you educate yourself, have the courage to go and step out of your comfort zone. If you're not sure about finances, it's not big and scary, it's not taboo. People like us are there to help you understand what it's all about and get the confidence so that you can go forward and make some changes to your life, because none of us want to live in poverty. We all want to have a fabulous life. So yeah, what commitment are you going to make today to change your future is the question that I'll ask everyone.
That's a very good question. I don't know about you, but I really love that photo of the ladies. I want to be one of those ladies when I'm older. I can jump out of a plane and have some fun, because ultimately we want to be happy. We want to be able to share that happiness as well. So it's trying to also think, because we always think of money, it's serious and something I've just got to get to, like, well, if it can be fun or it enables fun, it lightens up a bit. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be hard. You just little by little chip away and have that view of your life, that vision, align it to your values, and you can actually have fun with it. So let's try and make money fun again. Well, maybe not again, but let's make it fun. So we're going to get to Q&A very soon, I promise. But I think, Annette, if you want to just expand, if there's the next step of where we can take this, if you're interested.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alpha. Great. That was a great session on the confidence thing. And also that money doesn't have to be stuffy and boring. And, I used to go to a lot of CPD days, with finance. And, at one point, because I was 26 or 7 when I first started the business, and I was like the youngest female in the room. And that was, it was quite a common scenario. And I just thought, God, I've got such an edge. Like, who wants to go and see these stuffy old men talking about their money? Like, come and see a young, hip female. So yeah, I just probably didn't have the confidence though back then. So yeah. Anyway, so as Alpha said, so running on from that, the 3 of us are holding a one-day retreat coming up in September. So following on from the spring vibe about let's grow this, let's plant the seed. And, let's watch it, watch it grow and then reap the rewards at the end. And so we want to show you how really quite simple it is to do it. And we very much come from a holistic approach. It's not about spreadsheets and pie charts and things like that. We're actually putting on a retreat that's interactive and informative and fun. And most of all, guiding you through a plan and opening your mind up to different options and putting it all together in this empowerment plan that you get to take away with you in a workbook that we've diligently put together. I think it's about 18 or 20 pages full of so many golden nuggets. And so what I'll do is I'll just quickly talk to these bullet points of the things that are going to be covered in the one-day event that we're putting on. And that goes, we're going to talk a little bit more about what we've talked about tonight, but the core values and the lifestyle vision is really such a good place to start, because it's all very well talking about money and all that sort of stuff, but unless you know what your core values are, you can't, like Alpha said earlier, you can't know which direction you're going in. You're just blowing in the wind and you're just allowing life to sort of happen to you. So you'll be taken through a guided visualization or a meditation to help you identify your lifestyle vision, which is the vision of where you're heading. And having the vision will help you to make more aligned financial choices. And so we're not judging whatever your choices are, but we're allowing you to have that time and guiding you with our experience to help you to come to those alignments. And then part of this, we continue on with more sort of a mindset sort of stuff, which is to do with the Wheel of Life process. Now, the Wheel of Life provides a visual representation of your satisfaction with different areas of your life. So this is a really good day and chance for you to actually work on you, because as women, we come last typically in our household and in our lives. We're so busy running around doing everything for everybody else. So this is where you get to sit down and it's not just about your finances, but we're going to look at other areas of your life, and you'll get a nice, it's a circle process, and you start to get an idea of what's working, what's not working, what are you neglecting, where do you want to, what areas of your life do you want to work on? And then, of course, we look at working on the financial category or the finance category, and then we can help you to develop those new habits of what you want to do to where you want to go with your finances and how that fits into your lifestyle and your vision. And then we take you through some goal setting, financial goal setting. So we'll guide you. This is a specific exercise around how many years do you have to achieve your financial goals, and calculate how much income and assets you might need to meet those goals. So it could be goals for, you know, like Heather mentioned that you might have elderly parents, they might be overseas. I know in my case, one of my core reasons for investing was so that I would never wanted to be in the position where I couldn't go and travel back to the UK to see my family, and especially my elderly relatives. I never wanted to be in that position where I couldn't afford to do that and take time off to be able to do that. And to me, that was one of the driving factors. And also working for myself, so I didn't have to apply for leave. So estate planning. So the topic we know we need to think about, but we don't like to do anything with, and we'll take you through what are the key documents and main elements that you need to consider to getting an estate plan put together. So highly important if you've got anyone special in your life at all, and you've got any type of assets. So if you own a home, like what's going to happen, you know, when you're no longer here. These are things you need to start considering now while you've got all your faculties, because life goes by before you know it. So we talk about micro investing as well. So you may not have thousands of dollars and you don't want to invest in a big share portfolio, but you might want to put a little bit of time aside and a bit of money aside into some sort of portfolio that's going to grow over time, and use that method of compounding because it's so powerful. I think was it Albert Einstein that said compound interest was the 8th wonder of the world. So this is a really good process to start getting your kids involved as well with investing, and we'll take you through what micro investing is and some of the providers and what they offer. And then we'll look at property as well. So property is something that I've worked in for probably 20 years. So I'll be running through looking at the different cycles of real estate, house price growth, and obviously what we've just experienced and the different cycles, the boom and bust cycles. We'll be looking at property as a storage of wealth. We'll be looking at the power of our cash flow in a rent to buy scenario, or rent versus buy scenario, and how to get started in property. So a lot of people who are renting feel like they will never get into the housing market. They'll never get their foot onto the ladder. And again, that's also a little bit of a story. Yes, you may not be in a position now, but we'll give you here's what you need to do to get ready. And part of that is knowing how to qualify for finance. And again, that's my area of expertise, because it's very hard to firstly save your way to wealth, and second of all, it's very hard to buy a house outright, so you're going to need to borrow some money. So we help you to get yourself organized so that you get the right structure, because structure is very important when it comes to financing, and it's key to buying, whether it's your home or an investment property. And certainly if you want to grow a portfolio, the right finance and the way it's structured is absolutely key, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. We'll also go through some digital asset fundamentals. So this is shining a light on digital assets and the new technology that exists to support them. So, you know, there's a lot of new technology out, and a lot of people don't like to talk about it because it's too scary. And again, we'll debunk some of these myths. And, you know, digital assets are an emerging asset class, and it needs to be discussed, and, you know, so that we don't have fear around it. And we answer some questions like what are NFTs, what's cryptocurrency, and because digital assets can be complex and confusing to beginners, we'll explain it in an easy to understand language, and we'll get you started with if you've got any questions and what you need to know. And then we're bringing it all together by guiding you through the process of creating your very own financial empowerment plan. And then we help you to identify what the steps are that you need to do to make it happen. And of course, there's time for questions, and you'll be able to tap into the three of us, your mentors, our vast experience and knowledge base between the three of us. And it's a really rare opportunity to ask questions in that sort of safe and supportive environment with no judgment, because, you know, I think the three of us have probably seen it all and heard it all, and there's nothing that really shocks me when it comes to money. And I can guarantee you that if you think your situation's bad, it's probably nothing, because there's so many, there's probably people that have got a lot worse situation than you, and we tend to blow up how bad our situation is. But yeah, again, it's just because it has power over us and that control, and want to try and, you know, demystify a lot of that. So if this is of interest to you, may I recommend or suggest that you register straight away to take advantage of the early bird offer that we have provided, which is $197. And given everything that I've just gone through, I think it's an absolutely no-brainer. Such good value for money. It's a whole day jam-packed of basically all those pearls of wisdom that I've just gone through and more. And you also get a goodie bag, because who doesn't love soap and chocolate, right? As well as the workbook that you get to, you know, use on the day and take home with you. So you've got these 3 mentors all pouring out our years of experience and knowledge, and we wanted to make it affordable for you. So if you are interested, or you know anybody in your circle of friends or your family, any females that you think this might be helpful towards, please share the link and come over and register. And the link is on the slide at financialempowerment.eventbrite.com.au.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Annette. Yes, and morning and afternoon tea are provided as well. So that's an added, and there'll be lovely, nutritious, healthy things as well to keep our brains. So it's a mind, brains, soul, personal development. So with that, I'd like to open up to Q&A. So I know we've covered quite a lot there, and if you've got questions, please feel free to ask them. And yeah, you can ask us anything, and we'll answer it. So, and who would like to be the first question asker? Don't be shy.
I'm still taking all of it in. gotta give me a minute.
Multitasking, creating something, bloom.
I am. I'm making a flower crown while I'm at it. As you do. As you do.
What, Francesca, can I just ask what stood out to you? What was like a bit of an aha moment? And maybe we can form a question around that.
Yeah, I think what I was finding interesting as you were chatting is our absolute lack of education that goes with it. And so many things that you said resonated with me. And the realization, I didn't even realize until actually very recently how much of this we haven't learnt. We completely haven't learnt it. And even knowing where to go to learn it, like you were talking about, you know, ways to look at your savings and things like that. Like, this is not something that is taught in our schools very well. And yeah, I find it really interesting when you sort of then kind of go, oh, okay, I don't even know. Sometimes you don't even know what you don't know until you know it. Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting to sort of look at what it is that you need to learn, I guess. Does that make sense? It's not exactly a question, more of an observation of like, what I was thinking as you were talking.
Yeah, I've got quite a strong opinion on that one, because I believe that the school system really fails our children by not having a section on basic financial studies at all, to the point where I do it all the time. I'm still a good dinosaur and use cash, and I give people the exact change with extra. So like my $50 note and a 2 and a 1 or something. They can't work out the change to give me back, and it's a $20 note.
Yeah.
So it's just astounding, the lack of simple knowledge, and or they get out a calculator to do the calculations, and it's basic arithmetic. But even worse than that, it must transpose through into their own personal lives, because if you can't do the simple maths for that, then how can you know what you're spending? And I see all the time the tap and go and the afterpays, etc. And I just think we're really setting ourselves up as a society for a whole bunch of people that will just be eternally poor, because they think, oh, well, I'll just spend everything I've got. I can't afford a house. It's all gone. So I may as well just have a fantastic lifestyle. And then they're going to wake up in 20 years' time and go, what's happened? I can't earn the money as much as I can anymore.
Yeah. I also really liked where Alpha was talking about values as well. Like, you don't even know necessarily why you do what you do until you look at your values. And I was actually 5 years, I think, into my business before I had a business coach that worked with me in detail. And she said, do you know that, okay, so everything that we've looked at, you actually don't value money at all? And I'm like, oh. And I didn't even know that, which 5 years into my business was not great. But yeah, like, so I think so many, it's not taught to look at why you do what you do or what that then even means. So yeah, I think it's really valuable work to sort of look at and try and work out what it is. Yeah.
Can I add
money, and that allows you to do so many things as well. Like you think people think about money as a dirty topic, or you can't talk about it or whatever. It's a tool, really. And if you see it as an energy exchange, then you can use it to expand energy, to do things, to live a better life, to be able to help others as well. So it gives you so much more scope. Sorry, Annette, you were going to say something.
No, that's okay. I was just going to carrying on from what Francesca was saying about the business, because in our business we tend to defer to the accountant at the end of the year, because we've got to get the taxes done because it's compliance, right? And then he'll shove some paperwork in front of us and say sign here, and we tend to go, oh, what are we signing? And most people, and I've had a client that literally says, I have no idea what I'm signing, but I don't want to look stupid and I don't want to ask any questions because I'll look stupid. And I think, that makes me feel like, oh God, that's really quite devastating that they don't know and they're too afraid to ask because they feel like they're going to look stupid. And I can tell you right now that my experience with accountants, especially in my early days, I felt stupid too. So I've been there. And we don't want to ask those difficult questions. And so I think as we get older, we get more confident, and then we go, actually, I'm paying you, I can ask you whatever I like, when it comes to my taxes and things like that. And so, but what I found was that when I learned it myself, that's what actually gave me more confidence, because I actually learned some stuff myself. And I'm like, this is my business and I need to know what are we profitable? Because most people will go, oh, I turned over this much, I turned over all this money, or I earn all this money. But it's like, it's not how much you earn, it's how much you keep, and then what you do with that money. And so it's great to have a good turnover, but at the end of the day, if you're spending more than you're earning, like simple stuff, it sounds obvious, but if you're spending more than you earn, same in a business, you are not going to be able to sustain that for long. And so having that awareness around the money and knowing and having a look at your statements, your financial statements, when your accountant does the work for you at the end of the year, and understanding, I mean, a profit and loss sounds scary, but all it is just a list of all the money coming in, all the expenses, and then what's over. It's not so sometimes it's just the terminology and the language that can hold us back, because we think it means something like really scary, and coming back to that scary, we don't talk about it. But if we can put it into layman's terms, it's a statement of all that is coming in and all that's going out, and really that's the basis of it. So sorry,
Annette, I'm just conscious that we're on time, and I don't know if there's any other questions that anybody has that you'd like to ask. I'm aware it's everyone's time. No other questions? You can put them in the chat if you don't want to actually say it out loud. Okay, we might wrap it up there then. And like I said, there's more information, and even if you wanted to message us after this to ask questions, if you didn't feel comfortable doing it in front of the group, please feel free. Our email address is financialretreat@gmail.com. So feel free to shoot us through any emails, questions that you have. But yeah, I personally got a lot out of that as well, because it's always good to talk. As women, when we share problems, problem shared is a problem halved. I know that's theory, but at least we can start to realize that we all have things to learn, and it is a language, as Annette said. So any final statements from Heather and Annette before we wrap up?
Oh no, I just think it's a fantastic opportunity to actually get to work with some people that have lots of experience. And when I was young, I would have lapped up the opportunity to be involved in this sort of thing. And we're putting it on at such an affordable price, just so that it's accessible to a lot of people. So I really encourage people to spread the word around, and let's get some people along. Let's see where this goes.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for everyone for participating and sticking in there with us tonight. We've really appreciated it. It's been amazing. Thanks, Heather, and thanks, Alpha, as well.
Thanks, ladies. Yes, and thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Good night.
Right.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.